So after that, David was able to actually graduate from the Navy SEAL school and became a full-time Navy SEAL active duty. In the book, he does not talk about many of his operations or what he did. I know he was in the war in Iraq at one point and deployed over there and dealt with certain things. But actually, one of the main things he did do during his career as a Navy SEAL was he ended up working for the recruiting office. And one of the main reasons was because he was one of, at the time, I believe, only 36 African American Navy SEALs ever to graduate from BUDS. And the Navy, it might have been the Navy overall military, wanted him to become a recruiter and try to tell his life story and influence and inspire more young men to hopefully join the military and join the Navy in particular. So that was kind of his main role for the rest of his Navy career. And he had actually, during that time, started training for doing ultramarathons, and he ran his first 100-miler. And the whole reason why he ended up starting running these ultramarathons and doing all these crazy endurance events and long distance running was to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which is a foundation that helps pay for fallen soldiers' schooling and college and scholarships and stuff like that for any fallen soldiers' families. So he wanted to raise money and awareness for that. So he ended up training and becoming basically an ultra marathon runner. He did triathlons. He did anything along the sort. But when he first did it, he was, I guess, overweight. He was in his 220s, but he was muscular. So he did not necessarily have a build for running. So, and when he did some of these challenges, he did them without any experience or research into what he was getting himself into. So during several of these races, he, on some of them, he about killed himself because he pushed his body so hard that his body was shutting down several times. And he almost had kidney failure, and he was not prepared in any instance for some of the races he did. But over time, he slowly learned and adapted, learned how to train, and learned from his fuck-ups to then basically create and become a very deadly athlete when it came to ultra running. And part of it was his mindset. I don't think part of it was necessarily his own athletic ability. Some of it, I feel like, at times was just being able to push himself farther than some others were, because even in some of the races he did, like I said, he was ill-experienced, and he was able to push and still do better than many people that have done it before and were very professional, and he was able to fight and get through it. And for him, it became a mental challenge, which some of that does call back to when me and Noah were talking about weightlifting and cardio, and how at times cardio can be one of the most challenging things because it is just you in your head, and it is just fighting to keep going. But as he was a military recruiter, he ran many ultra races, and that was one of the things he did. Was he trained with some of the students from the schools he went and presented at, and he became a public speaker for the Navy. And he actually found out that he had a hole in his heart where he was actually basically leaking blood, and that it was causing unoptimal oxygen production in his bloodstream that was, if anything, preventing him from doing as well physically than he would have compared to anyone else. And at the time, most people that did have this condition were born with it, and there was no tests to know, and it wasn't something that you would necessarily know until you got older. So he talked about how, for the most part, because of all his athletic accomplishments, he had a regular heart rate of about 30, roughly, and regular pulse. And because of this, at one point, his heart rate was sitting at like 80 or 90. And whenever he tried training, his heart rate would spike to over 200. So he had issues and had to go to the hospital, and actually had heart surgery twice, because the first time the surgery they did not have a large enough patch to help cover and heal the hole. And even after his second surgery, he was uh, he was not hardly able to train for almost, I think it was pushing a year and a half. And which is even a testament to some of the crazy accomplishments he has had in the past with getting through 3 hell weeks, or well, 2.5, and doing all the other training and the marathons and the ultra running and endurance events. Was he did all this with a broken heart that physically caused him more pain and issues as he worked through some of his life journey, and it was a challenge for him that he had no clue that actually probably made everything harder. And that's probably one reason why he had so many lung issues when it came to pneumonia and stuff like that, or dealing with stress fractures. His body was not able to heal as well as anyone else because of its defect from birth. In the book, he talks about afterwards he did all these. He trained and tried getting into Delta Force, and he had been through Ranger School during his military, but he ended up retiring. And he actually basically had a near-death experience where all of a sudden he lost his energy, he was fatigued, he could hardly train, and he thought it had something to do with his heart. But it turned out because of what he was pushing his body to, his body had become so tight, and without stretching and flexibility, it actually had restricted blood flow throughout his body and had caused his organs and certain things to basically go on a decline. So at a young age, or a fairly young age, he was dealing with a lot of issues in his 30s and had to learn and stretch them out. But some of the other things he's done besides his ultra races was he also broke the record for the most amount of pull-ups in 24 hours. And he had to try that 3 separate times because just like but his ultra marathon training, he did not prepare, or not as well as he should have, his first times, and had to learn from his experiences to then better and make stuff easier, to then defeat and make his goals possible.